Hi, I'm so glad you're here. I've been waiting for you. Get ready to celebrate because the door that's opening for you through this video is exactly what will bring answers to every problem you've ever faced. Every relationship difficulty, every moment of sadness, every sleepless night, always experiencing some difficulty. What if I told you that the answers to all of this are available on 3 million shelves around the world in 25 languages waiting to be understood? And what if the most impressive part of this story wasn't just the revelation itself, but also how it came about? Know that you are not here by chance. You were brought to this moment. How wonderful. Perhaps you're exhausted from trying to fix your life with the same thinking that created your problems. Perhaps you've heard comments about A Course in Miracles, or perhaps you're just tired of feeling like you're fighting a battle you cannot win. Tired of difficult relationships, tired of carrying guilt and fear like weights you cannot release. There is a wisdom awakening in you. This restlessness, this questioning, this longing for something. This is your soul, calling you home to who you really are. A Course in Miracles is not just a book. What it offers is so much bigger than that. It's the key to completely transforming how you experience life. What you live is reality filtered through your lens, a way of seeing that you didn't choose on your own. It was shaped by your family, your upbringing, and your experiences. It determines whether you see strangers as friends or threats, whether you believe love is everywhere or hard to find. But what if your lens is distorted? What if the way you were taught to see yourself, other people, and life itself isn't just limiting but completely wrong? What if everything we've been conditioned to believe is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what's true? The recognition that the problems you think you have are not really your problems. They are just symptoms. And symptoms cannot be cured by treating symptoms. They can only be cured by addressing the cause. A Course in Miracles teaches that in fact there is only one problem. The belief that we are separated, everything else, every form of suffering, every conflict is just the same problem in disguise. And here's what's most interesting. If there really is only one problem, then there's only one solution, right? And this solution is not something you need to conquer. It's something you already are behind all the layers of conditioning. A Course in Miracles differs from any other teaching because it doesn't limit itself to transmitting concepts. It guides us through a profound process of transformation, offering mental training capable of dissolving the errors that prevent us from fully experiencing the love we are. In essence, I'm going to tell you the extraordinary story of how A Course in Miracles came about. The Course came through the most unlikely messengers, a skeptical psychologist who fought against the process every step of the way. It was simply received by a woman who would have preferred it had never happened, and transcribed by someone who wanted nothing to do with it. You don't need to believe anything. Just be open to the possibility that there might be a completely different way of looking at life relationships and challenges that can change everything. I've learned that miracles aren't supernatural, events that happen to special people. Miracles are natural expressions of love that happen when we remove what's blocking them. Those blocks aren't as solid as they seem. They're made of nothing more than thoughts, stories, and ways of seeing. What if the next few minutes could show you a path that's already transformed millions of lives, including many people who started exactly where you are right now? People who were tired of struggling, ready for something real, and willing to consider that. Maybe the answer isn't out there somewhere, but right here in that shift from fear to love, that's always available in every moment. Are you ready to discover what A Course in Miracles means? Are you ready to hear one of the most extraordinary stories ever told? Are you ready to learn about a teaching that promises not just understanding, but the real experience of peace, which is your right? It happened in 1965 at Columbia University's medical school, where brilliant minds debated mental health treatment. This was the epicenter of rational and scientific thinking, the last place where one would expect a miracle to happen. At the heart of this academic fortress, two people were about to become participants in one of the most extraordinary spiritual events of the modern era. This story is compelling because neither of them wanted anything to do with spirituality, miracles, or anything that couldn't be measured, tested, and peer-reviewed. Helen Schucman, a woman whose name would one day be whispered with reverence in spiritual circles around the world, though she didn't like it. Helen was a brilliant psychologist. She prided herself on being rational, logical, and atheist. If you had told Helen she would become the scribe of one of the most profound spiritual teachings ever received, she would have suggested you seek immediate psychiatric evaluation. Helen was known for her intelligence, her skepticism, and her complete intolerance for anything that wasn't scientific. She approached life as a scientist, approaches an experiment, rigorous analysis, and the premise that if something couldn't be proven in a laboratory, it probably wasn't worth considering. She worked with Dr. William Thetford, Bill to his friends. He was the head of the psychology department, and he was everything. Helen wasn't calm, diplomatic, easygoing, but Bill was getting more and more disturbed by the toxic atmosphere that seemed to follow wherever he and Helen worked together. Helen and Bill had a really difficult relationship here. Minds capable of incredible insights about how the human psyche works, but they were completely unable to find any peace with each other. The irony was huge. These were two psychologists, experts in human behavior and mental health, stuck in the worst kind of relationship dynamic you could imagine. They could analyze everyone else's problems perfectly, but they couldn't figure out how to stop hurting each other. The breaking point came when Bill reached his limit. The constant conflict, the tension, the hostility that only increased. It was in this climate that both their lives changed forever. Bill stood up and said something completely out of character. "Helen," he said, "we can't continue like this. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of these feelings. I'm tired of not getting along with people, and I know you are too. There has to be another way. There has to be a better way." The words hung in the air like a confession. It was Bill admitting that the brilliant psychological theories they taught and practiced weren't solving the most basic human problem: how to love others. Helen stared at him, shocked by his vulnerability. Here was this man she had been fighting with for years, suddenly speaking the truth. And in that moment, something surprising happened. "You know what, Bill?" she said. "I'll help you find the other way. A Course in Miracles is simply the other way." Neither of them had any idea what they were agreeing to. Neither could imagine that this simple exchange, this moment of exhaustion with the old way of doing things, was opening a door to something that would reach millions of people around the world. They weren't making a spiritual commitment. They were just two colleagues admitting they were tired of making each other suffer. But here's where the story becomes mysterious. Helen started experiencing things that her rational scientific mind just couldn't explain. It all began with incredibly vivid symbolic dreams that felt more real than being awake. For someone who prided herself on logical thinking, these experiences were really disturbing. Then she started sensing a presence. Helen felt like someone was with her, someone loving, patient, and completely different from all the critical voices in her head. It was this gentle presence that never demanded attention, but was always there when she got quiet enough to notice. The rational part of Helen's mind was going crazy. This was exactly the kind of nonsense she'd spent her entire career debunking. She was a scientist. She didn't believe in voices, presences, or anything that couldn't be measured. But the experiences kept coming, getting stronger and more impossible to ignore every single day. And then something happened that would change not just Helen's life, but the entire spiritual landscape of the world. Helen started hearing a voice with perfect clarity in the most unexpected way possible. A voice that spoke to her with infinite patience and love, even though she kept fighting it. A voice that started every session with exactly the same words. This is A Course in Miracles. Please take notes. Imagine Helen Schucman, a respected psychologist at one of the world's most prestigious universities. Suddenly, hearing a clear, unmistakable voice that was impossible according to everything she believed about reality, she was completely shocked. Helen's reaction was what you'd expect from a scientist. She thought she was losing her mind. Was she having auditory hallucinations? The irony wasn't lost on her. She knew the diagnostic criteria better than anyone, and by all the parameters she had studied, she was showing symptoms of psychosis. But here's where the story becomes extraordinary. The voice that spoke to Helen wasn't chaotic, confused, or fragmented, like the voices typically associated with mental illness. It was incredibly coherent, patient, and filled with a love so profound that Helen later described it as unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't the critical inner voice. She knew so well it was completely different and seemed to know her better than she knew herself. Then came the revelation. The voice spoke with clarity and power. I am Jesus. I am with you. For an atheist woman, this was the most disturbing aspect of the entire experience. Helen didn't believe in Jesus as a living presence, capable of dictating spiritual teachings, and there she was receiving direct communication from Jesus. She thought about seeking psychiatric help. Before that, Helen did something that would become one of the most important decisions in all spiritual history. She told Bill Thetford. Bill's response was extraordinary. Here was his colleague, the same Helen with whom he had fought for years, telling him she was hearing voices. He didn't question her sanity or suggest professional intervention. Bill did something unexpected. He listened, and more than that, he encouraged her to simply write down what she was hearing. Neither of them could have predicted what would happen next. Helen began what she would later describe as the 7 most extraordinary years of her life. The voice always returned. It never demanded anything. It simply became available whenever Helen was willing to listen and transcribe. She would sit with her notepads, and the voice would begin to speak in complete and perfectly formed sentences, which she wrote down word for word. What makes this process so extraordinary is that the voice never faltered, never corrected itself, never backed up or revised. It spoke in a continuous flow of ideas that developed systematically, starting from simple concepts and arriving at profound spiritual principles. The language was sophisticated, poetic, and internally consistent throughout countless sessions over 7 years. Often, Helen wanted to stop, but she heard, "You don't need to believe in me for this to work. Your willingness to write is all I need." And then it would continue exactly where it had left off, as if her resistance was simply part of the natural process. Bill became Helen's anchor through this whole incredible period. He typed up the handwritten notes, organized all the material, and gave Helen the emotional support she needed to keep going with a process that challenged everything she believed about herself and reality. Their relationship started transforming into something neither of them had ever experienced before. A real partnership based on mutual respect and a shared purpose. The voice speaking through, Helen showed this amazing understanding of psychology. It knew exactly how the human mind worked, but it talked about healing possibilities that went way beyond anything conventional therapy offered. It dealt with deep, complex concepts while giving people a spiritual framework that made psychological healing not just possible, but inevitable. What's most incredible is that the voice stayed perfectly consistent for 7 whole years. Ideas introduced in the early sessions got developed and expanded in later ones. Complex concepts were built systematically with each lesson, preparing you for deeper understanding. When the dictation was completed in 1972, Helen had transcribed nearly 2,000 pages of material that would become 3 distinct books. The text, a comprehensive explanation of principles, the workbook with 365 daily lessons, and a manual for those who would teach these principles to others throughout. This entire process, Helen never sought recognition even after the course was published and began transforming lives around the world. But perhaps that was exactly what made her the perfect messenger. Helen's resistance, her skepticism, her complete lack of interest. All of this served to ensure that the material was transmitted in the purest possible form. The voice that spoke through Helen created something unprecedented. A profound spiritual teaching humanity received a complete curriculum for undoing fear and awakening to love, transmitted through the most unlikely messenger imaginable. A woman who never stopped questioning whether any of it was real. After 7 years of meticulous transcription, Helen and Bill found themselves with something unprecedented. What emerged was something very sophisticated, a complete educational curriculum, perfectly organized and systematically designed to guide anyone from their current state of confusion and fear to a direct experience of inner peace and unconditional love. The course can only be described as the most complete spiritual education ever received. The textbook presents a complete philosophical and psychological framework that turns conventional thinking upside down. Every concept in the text has a purpose to help you understand why you are suffering and how this suffering can be completely undone. For every problem, it offers a complete solution. For every form of darkness, it shows the light that completely dissolves it. As you progress, the course becomes increasingly profound. You'll find yourself practicing forgiveness in ways you never imagined possible. You'll discover peace in situations that used to generate anxiety. You'll experience love in relationships that were once sources of conflict. It is a true rewiring of your neural pathways. The Manual for Teachers completes this extraordinary curriculum, addressing the questions that naturally arise as you begin to experience the changes the course makes possible. This is not a manual for teachers in the traditional sense. According to the course, every student becomes a teacher simply by embodying what they've learned. What makes this curriculum truly extraordinary is its complete integration. The text provides the theoretical foundation that helps you understand what you're doing and why. The exercises offer the daily practice that creates real changes. Together, they form a complete system for spiritual awakening, profound enough to satisfy the most serious seeker and practical enough for anyone willing to dedicate a few minutes a day to their own healing. This is not a book you read once and put on the shelf. It's a lifelong companion, a complete curriculum for remembering who you really are behind all the layers of fear, guilt, and limitation you've accepted as reality. It is an invitation to discover that the peace you've been seeking everywhere has always been waiting patiently within you. The question is not whether these teachings can transform your life. Thousands of people around the world will tell you they already have. The question is whether you're ready to discover what becomes possible when you stop trying to fix your circumstances and start healing your mind. If you've stayed with me this far, something inside you recognizes the truth. That recognition isn't an accident. We've uncovered the incredible story of how A Course in Miracles came to be, and now the real adventure begins. In the next video, we'll dive into Chapter 1, The Meaning of Miracles, where we'll discover that miracles aren't supernatural events reserved for a chosen few, but natural expressions of love that are available to everyone. Always reading this book is challenging for most people. That's why what I want to bring you here is a simpler way to understand the deep and advanced concepts of the Course. It's the best thing you can do for yourself and for everyone around you. It's simple because it doesn't require anything more than your willingness. It's profound because it has the power to transform everything about how you live. If this video resonated with you, if something deep down is saying yes to this possibility of healing and peace, then I invite you to subscribe and join me on this incredible journey. We'll explore each chapter, translating the Course's profound wisdom into simple understanding that you can actually apply. I'd love to know in the comments what brought you here, what you're searching for, what questions about life, love, or peace have been stirring in you. Your sharing might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, you're not here by accident. You found your way here because you're ready to receive these lessons. That means you're exactly where you need to be on your journey back home. Please hit that like button. Thank you so much for letting me share this extraordinary story with you. Get ready and get excited because the adventure is just beginning.